Imogen, thank you so much for joining us here at SuperReturn International. It's great to see you again and great to have you here to talk to about what the environment's like now in 2023. What trends are you seeing and obviously what challenges are there?
Firstly, I think it's been a lot slower this year than it was last year. So it's about half of the activity actually for 2023 that we saw in 2022. But we're also seeing a trend towards longer fundraising periods. So people are taking a lot longer to raise capital, moving away from that one and done situation. And also GPs not necessarily having to prove their prowess by the length of their fundraising period. So there is an acceptance that people are being more cautious in the current environment and taking things a bit more slowly.
And I guess that's being seen on the other side as well in terms of holding periods as well.
Yeah, so we've definitely seen a reduction in exit activity and also new deals. So by our calculations, it was roughly about 20% down at the beginning of the year. That has picked up a little bit, I think, as people start to get more comfortable with the current environment, and that activity has started picking up, but it's still fairly muted compared to where it's been over the last few years.
So what strategies, with all of that in mind, are you seeing firms employing now to sort of get moving, to get things happening? And do you think that it's something that will evolve over the next 12 months, or is it going to remain quite stagnant as you've described?
I think that people are definitely being more cautious. They're still applying the same fundamental principles of fundamentally good quality investing. So I don't think people are really changing their strategies around what they're looking for. There's more focus on things like resilience in different economic environments, more appropriate capital structures, so making sure that companies are structured appropriately. The management teams are always really important, so focusing on those really high quality assets. And those deals in that quality area are still getting done, but it's much fewer transactions that are happening, and those lower quality transactions are just finding it more difficult.
Are there any particular areas that you're seeing interest build in despite this backdrop?
So some of the recent things that we've seen around COVID and the Ukraine war, I think have changed how people have perceived certain trends. So for example, localisation is an important one that we're seeing across lots of GPs at the moment. People wanting to invest in localised supply chains so that they're not reliant on those far-flung supply chains that can cause them issues, and also energy stability. Making sure that they are in control of their own destiny, I think, is an increasing trend. And the obvious other one is AI. So that's come up at pretty much every investor meeting that we've been to. People are really thinking about how that fundamental transition might impact their companies that they're investing with.
You were here this week at the Women in Private Equity event. That was a new event that's being held during the SuperReturn International week. How was that, and how vital do you think it is for us to have events like that, specifically for women in this industry?
I really enjoyed it. It's quite a different feel. So obviously this conference is very large. You see everyone that you need to see in the industry, which is great. But actually the women's conference enabled you to have more detailed conversations with people who are in similar positions to yourselves at different firms. And we had really interesting roundtable discussions where we were sharing notes on what we're seeing in the moment, and also GPs and LPs were discussing about what's important to them and learning from each other. So I really enjoyed that interactive small table discussions where you can really get to grips with what we're seeing and what we care about in the market.
What is the state of play for women in this industry? You've had involvement with Level 20 as well that looks to push for more women in the industry and at a senior level in the industry. What do you think the situation is, and why do we still need to have an event that's specifically for women?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are obviously still challenges with the number of women in private equity, especially as they get towards more senior levels. So that retaining of talent, especially post children, is a challenge for some people. I think there is a real focus on trying to get in that female talent at the junior levels and nurturing it, and we are seeing progress being made. So it's great that we are seeing the impact of all of the work that has been done, but there's obviously still more to do.
Why is it important to have women in the room as well? I mean, it is just good for the bottom line.
and the diversity of thought process, the diversity of talent, and bringing other ideas into the room. If you always have the same people talking through the same ideas, then you don't get that breadth of experience and knowledge and different perspectives that's really important from an investment perspective.
And I guess that ties in a lot with what we're seeing in terms of trends towards lots of firms being much more focused on ESG as well. So having diversity is kind of part of that same mix of having an interest in companies that have a better social outlook.
Yeah, I mean, ESG has definitely become a really big focus, especially in Europe. There are some challenges in the US with some of the recent anti-ESG legislation that makes things a bit more difficult. But in Europe, it's very high on the agenda of what people are looking at when they're investing into GPs.
So with all of that in mind, and a chance to have conversations with up to 4,000 people at this conference this week, what do you think are going to be key trends that you'll see in the next 12 to 24 months, and what would you like to see this industry doing?
I think that this industry, one of the great things is it's got so many intelligent people and so many entrepreneurial ideas. I think we will see that entrepreneurial spirit evolve, and so there'll be new ways of doing deals, new ways of approaching problems, and people will continue to look at how they can best make money for their investors, and also obviously the underlying pensioners or holders beyond that. So that real entrepreneurial way of approaching more challenging environments and investing in those best managers and the best people who are well placed and have experience of investing through cycles, I think is going to be really important.
Imogen, always great to hear your insights. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.